Hello everyone, I am the Bandit Kirby. Welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a commander from the Lord of the Rings, Shelob, Child of Ungoliant. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks of being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more. You can also support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Shelob is an 8/8 Spider Demon with Death Touch and Ward 2 for just 2 generic, 1 black, and 1 green. If that weren't enough to make this card amazing, it gets even better since it gives all of your other spiders Death Touch and Ward 2 as well. But wait, there's more. Whenever another spider you control kills a creature with damage, not just combat damage but any damage, meaning that direct damage will trigger it as well, you create a token that's a copy of that creature except it's a food token, losing all other types. This is absolutely amazing. It's as if you're creating a mashup of these two tokens. The fact that the food tokens aren't creatures allows for some spicy plays that we'll soon see. For the moment, suffice it to say that Shelob is not only a potential Voltron commander for being a 3-turn clock, but an obvious spider tribal commander. Let's start with the most obvious order of business then, the spiders. I tried to include as many of the spider creatures that had utility to them, like card advantage, token creation, interaction, etc. One such spider is Doomweaver. It has reach and soul bond, where the soul bond effect has us draw cards equal to the power of it and the creature soul bonded to it. Naturally, we want to soul bond this to Shelob. If it died, we draw a whopping 8 cards from it. Another way to draw cards off a creature's powers is Guru Primal Hunter. Granted, if you did this immediately, then he would go away since it costs the same as his starting loyalty. However, all of his abilities are relevant in this deck, so you could +1 him first and then -3 him after you get Shelob, since it's a good play on curve at 5 mana and then Shelob at 6. Return of the Wild Speaker, Soul's Majesty, and Ishkanah's Expertise are more ways to draw cards off of Shelob's massive 8 power. Granted, it doesn't have to always be Shelob, but more often than not, Shelob will be the biggest creature on our board. As always, bonus points if you chain either Return of the Wild Speaker or Soul's Majesty off of Ishkanah's Expertise. Oran Frostfang and Toski Bearer of Secrets also provide synergistic card advantage. The Snake provides some redundancy for Shelob's Death Touch ability since it gives it to all attacking creatures. This doubles down on swinging in with our weak spiders in order to either draw cards or trade for bigger creatures. These are amazing here. Same with the Great Henge. Whenever a non-token creature we control enters the battlefield, we draw a card and it gets a +1/+1 counter. On top of that, it can tap for double green and gaining 2 life. However, if we already had Shelob out, then this will not only cost us double green to cast, essentially paying for itself. So good. It's even dropped a bit in price due to the party tree version released in the set. Look-Away Tower, Thought Vessel, and the Decanter of Endless Water are included precisely due to how many cards we can draw with all these effects thanks to Shelob. While the land doesn't take up a slot in the deck, and the others being mana rocks is a good bonus, with Soul Ring being the only other mana rock in the deck is green, so we don't need to depend on them to accelerate our mana. But we'll see the rest of those effects later on. Going back to utility spiders, Skyfisher Spider provides some interaction stapled onto a spider. This one destroys any non-land permanent, but only when it enters the battlefield, and only if we sacrifice a creature when it does. That's fine though, since it's incredibly useful once it's on the battlefield, and the deck already has other forms of non-synergistic interaction, like Assassin's Trophy, Beast Within, Maelstrom Pulse, and Casualties of War. While Skyfisher Spider is on theme and Shelob makes all of our spiders train in blocks, it's still important to include catch-all interaction pieces, and these are the best for the deck. Same with something like Kindred Dominance, which will destroy all non-spider creatures. Spiders are such an uncommon creature type in Commander that you will more than likely cast this as a one-sided board wipe. Speaking of one-sided board wipes, Silklash Spider is yet another interaction spider in the deck. For X and double green, it deals X damage to each creature with flying. Since Shelob gives Death Touch to all of our spiders, we just need to pay 1 and double green to kill all flyers on the board. Not only is this busted in and of itself, but recall that Shelob's trigger isn't just for combat damage. This will have us create a food token copy of each flyer this thing just killed off. All for just 3 mana. This creature is ridiculous here. If that wasn't all, it has reach and is a 2/7 all for 5 mana, allowing you to play it on curve before Shelob. However, this isn't the only trick like this in the deck. Lothlorien Blade, Ulvenwald Tracker, Vivian Arkboat Ranger, Arena, and Colony Ambush help turn any spider into a pinger like Silklash Spider. In fact, the pinging effects I'm going to now discuss are the core of the deck. These cards are its bread and butter, since we're going to use this to ensure we not only wipe the board, but take advantage of those food copies. Starting with these, they all have some effect that deals damage equal to the creature's power. While the magnitude doesn't matter so long as the creature has Death Touch, it might always have it, so keep that in mind. The sword triggers on attack, so it'll kill off a target creature before blockers are even declared. The tracker has the creature's fight, so he might be trading a smaller spider or spider token, but that's fine since we'll be taking down either their biggest creature or their best one. Vivian has this effect on her -3 ability, meaning we can't do it every turn. However, her +1 ability is incredibly useful here since it gives 2 +1/+1 counters distributed how we want, and those creatures also gain trample. With Death Touch and Trample, we only need to deal 1 damage to the blocker and the rest tramples through. Doing this to Shelob is amazing to help further guarantee that Voltron kill. But we'll see tech for that strategy later on. Arena is also a fight effect, but the opponent chooses the creature they'll send to fight. That's fine since we're still killing off something. Keep in mind that on its own, this land will not tap for mana, so do not count this as a land slot. The deck is running Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Yamavaya Cradle of Growth that will help turn all our lands into bayous. But even then, Arena is not a mana generating land on its own. Curiously, Kalni Ambush can be considered a land in the deck list. That is of course if you aren't greedy and play it as a land if you need that land drop. It's also an instant, which is amazing to be able to fight in response to anything. Super good here. Pathway Arrows, Thorn by Staff, Wolf Hunter's Quiver, and Viridian Longbow make it so we don't have to fight or attack with a spider to get the job done. We could just tap the creature and pay any amount of mana that's also required. Fortunately, the Longbow is just tapping without the mana, same with Wolf Hunter's Quiver. However, the staff is possibly the best one here because it untaps the equipped creature whenever a creature dies. If we had the mana, we can machine gun down all of our opponent's creatures. So the ideal case is equipping a Death Touch Spider with both the staff and the longbow. Not to be outdone, Trailblazer's Torch also does something similar. This one depends on attacking since it pins blockers. However, it will more than likely deter blocking since there will be almost no way for any trace to happen since the equipment triggers on blocks. Well, before the combat damage step. Sure, our creature is still considered blocked, but we can attack with total abandon. As a bonus, the torch gives us the initiative when it enters the battlefield, giving us yet another potential way to ramp, draw cards, etc., since all the rooms in Undercity are useful. However, we can make the most of Trailblazer's Torch thanks to lure effects, like Grappling Hook, Nemesis Mask, and You Look Upon the Tarrasque. Grappling Hook is good because it at least has us choose one creature to force to block, which is amazing removal, via a Death Touch attacker. However, combining Nemesis Mask with Trailblazer's Torch on a Death Touch creature is Chef's Kiss. We're essentially killing off every creature able to block that attacker. If we control Shelob, then we can create a food token copy of all of those creatures. Absolute madness. Even without Trailblazer's Torch, Nemesis Mask and You Look Upon the Tarrasque are great because you only need 1 point of damage with Death Touch. So if 8 creatures block Shelob, then we're killing off 8 creatures. Again, these are the spicy strategies for the deck in order to really make the most of our small spiders or even our commander. Speaking of small spiders, Arasa the Endless Web, Loth Spider Queen, and Twin Silk Spider help create spider tokens. Arasa will trigger quite often in a commander game, so pay attention that you don't miss your triggers. Twin Silk Spider is easy to keep track of because it's just when it enters the battlefield. It might seem unassuming, but you're getting 2 threats for just 3 mana. Loth is great because we can draw a card for 0 loyalty at the cost of 1 life. However, her main function is creating 2 spiders with her -3 ability. Fortunately, whenever weak creatures we control die, she gets loyalty counters, so any spider tokens or small tokens dying in the name of taking down bigger creatures will help us keep eating more spiders. Her emblem isn't really the point of running her, but getting it isn't a waste of time either. Arachnogenesis is another amazing card in the deck and has the potential of not only creating a ton of spiders, but clearing the board of any alpha strike sent our way, especially if we control Shelob. There's a reason this card is so expensive, and hopefully we get a reprint of it sooner than later. Helm of the Host is another way of creating spider tokens, especially if we equip Shelob with it. If we did, then each copy of Shelob will give our other spiders another instance of Ward 2, making them even harder to deal with. On top of that, it'll multiply how many food copy tokens we'd be creating. Absolutely insane on Shelob. Speaking of multiplying tokens, Dribnod Carnage Dominus is no doubling season, but it does double death triggers. Doubling Shelob's trigger is amazing since we get twice as many food copy tokens. If that weren't all, it has a built-in way of becoming indestructible, potentially for 0 mana. It's also an 8/3, which is nothing to scoff at. Lastly, Academy Manufacturer makes the most of those token copies being food because it will trigger, giving us a treasure and clue as well, providing us with both mana acceleration and card advantage. This is one of my favorite cards in a very long time, and I love including it in any deck that can run it. It even makes something like Gingerbread Cabin much better than it seems. The deck doesn't have much in the ways of synergizing with food, but Gingerbread Cabin doesn't really take up a slot on the deck, and it can even be fetched for or ramped for with the deck's basic land ramp type effects, so you might as well run it. The rest of the spiders in the deck are Mutavault, Chainweb Arachnir, Canopy Spider, Copper Longlegs, Deadly Recluse, Ruins Recluse, Snare Spinner, and Root Spider. Yes, I know that Mutavault isn't a spider, but it transforms into one for just 1 mana each time. In any case, these spiders are very cheap ways of getting spiders in play for when Shelob eventually shows up. So there's really nothing special about them apart from that, but the deck does need to have at least some spiders to play. All except for Root Spider. I love slotting in homeland cards into my decks whenever I can for nostalgia's sake. It costs a whopping 4 mana compared to the others, which just cost 2, but it gets first strike when blocking, so if it also has Death Touch, it becomes an amazing blocker. While the deck's tech makes it so that opponents will barely keep any creatures on board, that might not be enough to win before opponents bounce back by ganging up on you. Fortunately, there are more ways of making the most of Shelob's ability. Finn the Fangbearer makes it so that only 5 spiders going through is enough to kill off an opponent. That might seem like a lot, but not if they don't have any blockers. Finn also has Death Touch himself. This card performs better than you'd think. I won a game recently with this deck where I had Helm of the Host equipped to Finn, and in a couple of turns was able to kill off the table because opponents were getting way more than 2 poison counters per Death Touch creature hitting them. So good here. Overwhelming Stampede is another game-ending spell that could happen from out of nowhere. This RKO sorcery is busted when you have Shelob in play, since all of your creatures will gain at least +8/+8 and trample. With Death Touch, they'll literally trample over anything for that Alpha Strike kill, potentially all 3 opponents at once. Apart from the spider travel aspect of the deck, we can make even further use from Shelob providing a potential Voltron kill. Vogue's Passage is included in case we don't yet have ways of giving trample to Shelob. Short and sweet and doesn't take up a slot on the deck, yet with the deck relying so much on Shelob, Voltron or otherwise, Ward 2 might not be enough. Therefore, Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, Hammer of the Zon, and Mithril Coat are obviously included. The best thing about Hammer of the Zon, besides the auto-equip effect, is that it gives that auto-equip effect to any other equipment we have enter the battlefield. This makes it much easier to equip those pinging equipment onto Shelob or any other spider. It's so good here. Same with Mithril Coat since it auto-equips to Shelob, plus has Indestructible itself. Swarmyard is another way to protect Shelob or any other key spider since it can regenerate them all without taking up a slot in the deck. Speaking of regeneration, the deck is also running Heroic Intervention, Golgari Charm, and Rapid Vigor to protect our board. We don't have access to white, but at least we can play the first one to give our whole board indestructible, and the other 2 to regenerate our board. Wrath effects with a no regeneration clause are few and far between, so these will save your board more often than not. Another way of making the most out of Shelob only requires using Shelob's ability once, and that's with our own creatures. Those are Cinderhaze Wretch and Devoted Druid. If these creatures are killed off by one of our own spiders, they return to the battlefield as a food token without any other card types. That means that they can be tapped without summoning sickness. On top of that, getting -1/-1 counters means nothing because they have no toughness for not being a creature. So if you killed off your own Cinderhaze Wretch, returning to the battlefield like this, then during your turn you can ensure that your opponents don't keep any cards in their hand. Doing so with Devoted Druid will give you infinite green mana. This can be used to cast whatever you're able to, as well as paying for Thornbite Staff's ability, helping you wipe the whole board as well. Inspiring Statuary is another way to make the most of the food tokens we're creating, since we can tap them down to help cast non-artifact spells. The deck doesn't really use the tokens as food, since a lot of creatures in Commander have static or activated abilities. At least those that have entered the battlefield triggers can be used as food if we needed the life. Traverse the Outlands also makes the most of our Commander. For just 5 mana we have the potential of getting at least 8 basic lands from our library onto the battlefield. This spell is absolutely busted here, just like the card draw effects that care about Shelob's power. The deck is still running non-synergistic land ramp spells though, like Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits into the North, and Rampant Growth. The deck is running all of its basics as snow covered to make the most of Into the North in order to have yet another 2 CMC way of getting a land onto the battlefield from our library. Bitterthorn's Animus and Sword of the Animus are a bit more synergistic than these since they require attacking with a creature, but at least they trigger on attack and not combat damage. So even a lowly 1/2 spider with Death Touch can make the most of these since we can get the land as well as potentially trade in blocks. The rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. The deck's running all 7 fetch lands, Overgrown Tomb, Woodland Chasm, Haunted Mire, Twilight Mire, Deathcap Glade, Undergrowth Stadium, Woodland Cemetery, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as 2 snow-covered swamps and 9 snow-covered forests for all the basic land ramp effects in the deck, along with Into the North. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you. You do you. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Shelob, child of Ungoliant. While I took a more technical and encompassing approach to building Shalob by highlighting combo, Voltron, and spicy tech more so than purely spider tribal, you can definitely lean more towards pure spider tribal if you wanted to. However, I decided to make the absolute most of all of the potential Shelob has, even if the tribal aspect seems second place. It is still present though. If you're interested in the deck list of the spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Medic Kirby, and happy brewing.